Hi, Northaven family and friends. This is another episode of Northaven Voices, and I can't tell you how excited I am for this particular interview. If you know anything at all about Northaven, you know the person that we are about to speak to. He is our musician extraordinaire. He plays the pipe organ and the piano, and I bet we're going to find out about some other instruments today too. But welcome, Larry McCain. I'm so glad to have you. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Stan. I'm honored to be a part of this. Thank you very much.
The first thing I want to say is something I've said to you already in person when we talked, and that is since the pandemic started and we've gone to church virtually, I have so enjoyed the different camera angles and getting up close views of that huge, beautiful pipe organ that you play.
It's that's kind of rare. I mean, there I am on Sundays, all high and lifted up there, a long way from everybody. That's a good thing when it comes to how the sound comes out. But a lot of people have mentioned that they've enjoyed seeing a little close up and seeing the louvers open and close. And in some respects, maybe because it is video, you're kind of forced to watch. There you go,
Right. Well, my first question is this. A lot of us as kids had to take piano lessons. So we've all had that experience, but not very many people in the entire world ever get the opportunity to learn how to play a big pipe organ like that. How did that happen for you? Well,
it began the same way most folks do with piano lessons. When I was 7 years old, I was active in a church. We didn't have a pipe organ in our church. We had an organ, but it was not a pipe organ until later. But I kept studying piano all the way through. Began college, actually, my first semester as a music major, but in piano, going towards music ed and so forth. But the choir director at the college knew that I really enjoyed church music, and he says, "Larry, if you're serious about church music, you need to learn to play the organ. If for no other reason, if you get a job, if you're looking for a job and you can direct the choir and you can play the organ, well, you've doubled your opportunities." And so it was in college that I began. The piano background obviously helped me, but that's when I began. And there was a pipe organ there at the school, and there were several organ majors, and we had to kind of jockey our schedules to find time to practice because there was just really one organ to practice on.
Right.
So that's where it got started as a result of my headed towards church music as a career and knowledge that I wanted to learn. And I had two friends that were in school with me, one a bit older, one my age, that we were all organ majors, and we were all organ nerds. We were all skinny and wore glasses and played the organ.
Fantastic. Well, from my perspective, when I watch you play, one of the most amazing things is that not only do you have to do everything you would have to do if you were playing the piano, but you also have to use your feet. Was that a hard transition?
Yes, it's like a whole different set of muscles and coordination. For those who haven't had a chance to look closely at what that is down there, it's a keyboard with black notes and white notes. They may not be that color, but that's the same thing they are. And you usually most folks play them with their toes and their heels. Mm-hmm. So that gives me, as it were, four fingers to play the notes. Sometimes I just play one at a time. Most of the time I just play one note at a time, but other times it's others. And then the balance between doing that and the other. That's the tricky part. And I still, if I'm playing a piece that's using left hand and right hand and pedal, when I practice it, sometimes I have to practice one hand at a time in the pedal to get my muscles so that my left hand goes down and my left foot goes up, and I got to train my brain to do that.
Right.
So it's a challenge, and but it's a skill. I'm not sure there's anything magic about it. It's a skill that a coordination skill that needs to be learned. I wasn't a very good dancer when I was growing up because I was a Southern Baptist.
Right.
And we didn't dance, and so I didn't even have that to fall back on.
Right. I get that. The other thing that's interesting to me is when I look at different pipe organs, and I might be wrong on this, that's why I'm asking you, it looks to me like each pipe organ sort of has its own unique layout and that kind of thing. How hard is it to transition from one pipe organ to another pipe organ, such as the one you played in college and the one we have at Northaven?
Well, it takes preparation. On the rare occasion that I have to go in and play a different organ without preparation, just to go in and do it, then that's a real challenge because it takes a little time to familiarize yourself. The keyboards are the same, but there's a different number of keyboards. They might be arranged differently, but the main difference is in the stops, the sounds that I have to choose from, and where things are located. So yeah, it takes some doing. Pianos. Every piano might feel a little bit different, but you can pretty well depend on the notes and the keys being where they always were. So yeah, it's a challenge, but it's fun. They're when it comes to pipe organs, there just are hardly any duplicates anywhere. So yeah, everyone's going to be different. So if you were going to do a serious concert or a program on a particular instrument, you would need at least a day to familiarize yourself if you really wanted to do it right. And sometimes more than that, to come in with 30 minutes to do it, you might not be able to do your best because it takes some adjustment.
Right. And I think people from Northaven would also be curious about this. I know a little bit because I see your car coming in and out of the parking lot a lot, but tell us a little bit about how often you practice throughout the week to prepare for a weekend or a service.
I probably practice an average of 6 to 10 hours a week, depending on what's going on, and that includes planning and practice, selecting some new music, finding some old music, practicing, setting the registrations, the sounds, so forth. So in my previous church job, before this, I was organist and choir director, and so I had to kind of divide my time, and I didn't invest as much time in practicing the organ as I am able to now. And I love the fact that I can concentrate on that and learn new music and try to get the best out of the instrument.
Well, it shows every week. I appreciate it so much.
Well, it's a joy to play.
Yeah, well, it's a joy to have you and to listen to what you bring us each week. So I'm going to completely change topics on you from the organ, but I ask every musician this because I bet you there are other instruments you play that none of us know about. Do you play some other instruments too, even if you play them badly?
I play the two other main instruments that I play are guitar and flute. Nick asked. I did flute one of the first Sundays that Nick came, and he hadn't asked me again, but I hope he will. But I did play the flute. I played the flute in high school, and then when I graduated from college, which was at the height of the Vietnam War, I volunteered for the Air Force, auditioned for a band, and ended up playing in an Air Force band during my military service. And so I played the flute and piccolo at that time, and still play from time to time. My wife Diane also plays the flute, so that's kind of fun. And then guitar, I started like a lot of kids, just, when I was in junior high and thought the ukulele was cool and got a little ukulele and then got a little bit bigger one and then got the guitar and I don't, I play just chords and fool around with it for fun. I've never studied guitar except in a book. I've never had an official guitar lesson, and which gives me a lot of respect for people that do the same thing on the piano, that you maybe haven't had a piano lesson but enjoy playing by ear and just enjoy sitting down and playing. I think that's great. It's recreational and fun. I think maybe someday when I grow up, I would like to take some real guitar lessons and find out what I really ought to be doing with it.
Right. I understand. I know something else about you that I bet most people don't know, and I'm going to ask you about this. Tell me about your time when you lived and worked in Puerto Rico and how that happened and what you were doing there.
Oh boy, that's right. You did hear about that, didn't you? Yeah. Well, I was in a life transition, to put it mildly. I had been married and was divorced, and was attending a Baptist seminary, and was asked not to return, and decided, well, I think it's time for a change. And I started looking around and saw this ad in, would you believe, in the United Methodist Reporter. Some Methodists would be familiar with that, I would guess, because I was not a Methodist, by the way. And I saw this ad for this school in San Juan, Puerto Rico, that was looking for a music teacher, and this church that was looking for a choir director at the same time. And it was like a kind of a dual position, as it were. And I applied, and would you know, the superintendent called me, and they hired me at a distance. I mean, they didn't fly me over for an interview. They just said, you sound good to us. Come on. So I shipped my Volkswagen over there, and I moved over there. I moved into a kind of a on-campus residence place and taught music in a school. It was at a school that was sponsored by what was then the United Methodist Board of Missions. It was an English-speaking school mostly for Americans and others who lived on the island. Mm-hmm. So I taught music there, and then was choir director in this church that was a interdenominational, again, mostly English-speaking church. And I lived a block and a half from the beach. I was single. I had 2 jobs, which put together made a decent living, but they were both theoretically, it wasn't great pay, but it was a great experience. When I went, I studied French in high school and German in college, and the first time I had to speak another language, it was Spanish. Right. So I just learned street Spanish, and just enough to be dangerous, and but had a great time. Developed some friendships that I have still been able to maintain from that many years ago. It was a crazy time, but it wasn't a place. I left because it wasn't a place I wanted to pursue more of a career in church music, and it wasn't really a place for that. Every once in a while I look back and say, well, maybe I should have just laid back and stayed and everything would have been all right.
Well, being a few blocks from a beach in Puerto Rico sounds like a good place to be for a while anyway.
Yeah, it was. Stop at the Cuban bakery on the way back from church on Sunday, and that was the big decision as to whether to go to the beach now or later, most of the time.
Right.
And as pale as I am, I actually ended up with a tan,
Well, tell me about some other places you lived.
I lived in West Virginia for several years, and that was, I actually served in in a Methodist church. It was a full-time organist choirmaster position in a United Methodist church there, and that was a culture shock. And beautiful country, some great people, and again developed some friendships that I still have, even to this day from that. That was actually the last full-time church position that I had. Most of my other positions, and most since then, have been part-time. That is to say, I've made my main living from another source and have kept a church job. And I frankly prefer it this way. The administrative and political and other things that are associated with full-time positions in churches are I'm okay to have a little bit less of that and to be able to concentrate on what I do. But so, yeah, that was, and then after that came back to what is my home area, which is the Dallas-Fort Worth area, which is where I started and now where I've ended up.
Yep. Well, tell us about your decision to come to Northaven. What prompted that, and how has it been for you?
Oh, it's been a wonderful move. My former church, I had been there for 25 years as organist and choir director. It was a Lutheran church, a smaller church, but when we began, a very good church, ended up with some real challenges that ended up that I just felt like that I wasn't able to make a contribution that I should be able to, and the resources were dwindling instead of having much potential of increasing. It was a tough decision to leave because my wife Diane and I were together in that church for all that time, and we're still together, but just not because of the church. And so it was our friends, our social contacts, and everything else. So that part was tough. And again, we're still in touch with many of our friends there, and glad to be able to. But I ended up, when I was casting around for other opportunities, I ran into Stephanie Rhodes at one of the workshops in January of 2 years ago, whenever it was, and just kind of a casual conversation. She mentioned that they were looking for an organist, and I said, "Well, I'm looking for a new place." And we knew each other, but not well. I mean, we hadn't ever officially worked together, but I knew her from her handbill experience, and she knew me from my business with Allen organs and Steinway pianos, my retail background. And so that's when the opportunity came, and met with Marty and the committee and so forth. And I had heard of Northaven through other friends who had served there. I knew past choir directors, past organists, and of course Jane Marshall was. I mean, I had, and the other SMU folks that I'd known and so forth through Perkins School of Music and so forth. All of that reputation was something that's important to me. I knew a little bit about Northaven's approach with social justice and LGBTQ, but it was not the strongest thing that I knew. But it was all there, you know. And so, and I could tell just from meeting with Marty and with Stephanie the eclectic nature and openness of what was happening, and the organ was, you know, tempting to play and all that. So it was a good match. I was very clear. Would you believe?
I know we're getting near the end, but I've got to ask one more question. So for someone who has studied music their entire life, and really, I guess in a lot of ways, it would be fair to say that music encompasses, it has to be just the majority of your day. So here's my question for you. When you and Diane are sitting around the house or driving around in the car, what kind of music do you play?
I just heard Diane chuckling in the background. She's going to wonder what my answer is on that. It kind of depends on who's pushing the buttons, you know. We have to take turns sometimes. No, we enjoy 70s and 80s pop and current music. I enjoy jazz a little bit more than she does, but particularly jazz fusion, stuff like that. She enjoys, and then sometimes we got it tuned to WRR and are listening to orchestral and classic. It is pretty eclectic, I would say, and if there's something that we hear about from somebody else, we like to expose ourselves to it, and I like to feed myself with as many different kinds of music as I can, because it helps when I'm going to improvise. If I'm going to do something like that, I like to have other stuff feeding in, you know. But
glad to hear that you guys fight over the radio dial, because that's the same thing at my house too. It depends on who's pushing the buttons at my house.
Well, you know, there's a few that we agree on, like Linda Ronstadt. We agree on her.
Yeah.
And James Taylor, we agree on him. So I guess those might be some of our top ones.
Oh, perfect. Well, if of all the people you've ever been able to see live, who comes to mind as one of your favorite live performances?
Well, again, probably James Taylor, Lyle Lovett, and we did get to see Linda Ronstadt in person. So those would be some of our top ones.
Well, I never got the chance to see Linda Ronstadt, but I have seen Lyle Lovett and James Taylor, and those are fantastic choices. Well, you and I will, if we ever get past the pandemic, you and I and Diane and my wife will have to figure out some way to maybe go see James Taylor or Lyle Lovett.
I'd love it.
Well, Larry, I wish we had longer, but I've enjoyed this so much, and we've reached the end of our. So thank you so much. And we really, I know I'm speaking on behalf of everyone at Northaven, we just love what you bring to us every week, and we appreciate your talent so much.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to be a part of it. Thanks for the opportunity to do what I can.
Thank you.